Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Welcome everyone to Introduction to Industrial Engineering. Today we will continue with the part 2 of the human factors and safety. We discussed in the first part about the work study, and we learned how we calculate also the labor productivity index. Today we will continue with the work study sub area, and we will learn about the total time of a job. If you have a task in the manufacturing or industrial, and that task required a specific time, or you have a job that contain of subtasks or sequence of tasks, and each task has a specified time or standard time, how you calculate the total time for that job. For example, withdraw money from the bank, deposit money in the bank, patient diagnosed in a hospital, assembly for components in the product. These jobs contain of tasks that done by either one or more than one person. So how we calculate the total time for the job? The total time for a job includes two things and two main components: basic work content, excess work content. Basic work content is the thing or the work that you cannot reduce the time, which is it has to be theoretically done in this during this time, due to the level of that task, or due to the system or the method you are using. So basic work, you can relate it to something that a job or a task، يعني عملية أو خطوات ما تقدر تغير فيها الوقت. يعني this is the minimum you can do that job. Okay. The excess work content, usually in the real life we have excess work content, and this is divided into different categories. اللي هو the opposite of the basic work content. The excess work content is more than or there is an extra time or extra work done can be reduced. To understand more the excess work content, let's understand the categories of the excess work content. There are three categories: A, and there is the next slide, B and C. For the better visual appearance, we put A and C. There is no sequence between them. The first category of the excess work, that work content added by poor design specification. I have poor material, I have poor design that require too many tasks to do, or let's say inappropriate standards for the material or for the related tasks that need to be completed. So that produce excess work. عمل إضافي. You have to do it due to this category. The other category, will list them first all, and then we can explain them with examples. The second work category, which is the work content resulting mainly from the contribution of human resource, absence of the human resource, and late of the human resource. So it comes from the human resource type of causes. Let's take an example here. For example, you went to a place where a service provided, and the people should work on that place to serve the customers are three. Let's say the cashier lines, the minimum should have 3 people to serve the customers. Okay, you went to shop or supermarket. طيب, imagine if the 2 out of those 3 cashier, they were absent and no one were there to to fill their position. How that will affect the excess work? The excess work will be for the person who's going to be covering the other 2 absence. The excess work also will reflect to the customers. Wait time and a long queue will be happened. You can measure that and apply it to any work where late or absence. If you're working in a team and you are doing a project, for example, this course project, and one of your team members, he was absent or late in submitting his responsibilities or actions or assignable work, and that affected the teamwork to complete the work on time, and maybe that late requires some of the other team members to complete that parts so they can submit it on time. So this is one of the things that can cause excess work that can be reduced. And maybe now you can tell what is the difference in the basic work content. يعني for example خلينا نقول writing a report is one of the requirements in the project. Writing the report, let's say the average time for completing or writing a report, let's say it's 1 hour or 2 hours per day for 2 maybe weeks. That we can consider it the basic work content or the standards, that the reference, I mean, work content. So we cannot reduce it, and it has to be designed in a somehow, as we said, is theoretically calculated, is not arbitrarily, but this type of work content is out of our control. The one that we work on and try to control it is the excess work in order to find the total time job, because basically the total time job is the sum of both the two. لأنه you consider in the total time the basic time and the excess work. Continuing with the excess work, يعني we described now, or we listed two, one related to the poor design or specifications. أعطيكم example. مثلا if you are working with the food industry and the raw material or the ingredients that you receive, they are not in a good condition, not all of them. So that will need excess work to filter this material and extract them good ingredients so you can use them. Also, there will be a waste of the time and also waste of material that will not be used. But here we are focusing on the excess work to abstract this good material or good ingredients from the bad patch that you have received. So excess work also comes in different examples. Poor design, or if you think about it, the Lego toys, اللعب هذه حقت الليجو التركيب, there are some other brands, not the same original company Lego that well known for even toys and movies. They do the same. They do blocks that assembled, but the poor design, if you compare them, the way how it will need excess work to be assembled in other companies due to the poor design compared to the Lego, who is experienced in doing these toys for over decades. So in the way how they design those and the instructions manual, how they simplify even the steps. And we ask, for example, two of them to be assembled, the excess work will be from the other competitors that they didn't do the design as the Lego company. It will be more. Again, if for example, you are working on a mechanical system, and that mechanical system has many screws that fits in a hard positions that where you can achieve them. يعني مداخل أو اللي هو ربط المسامير بيكون بطريقة في أماكن جدا صعب الوصول إليها. So it will need excess work or sometimes too many components are aligned on each other or next to each other. So to get to the point where you are going to fix, it takes time. I experienced once, يعني هذه from my personal experience. You know the car battery اللي هي بطارية السيارة. Some يعني companies, they poorly design where it's located and the size of that battery compared to the size of the car. يعني that car was خلينا نقول the economy size, and the battery was relatively big and it's similar to the size of the SUVs. Okay, beside to that, because it could be the systems needed in this matter, but the design of the location was the issue. And I've seen that many times when it's been replaced over the years. When the technician works on that, he said this is really a bad place where they place it. يعني I will describe this يعني with some maybe technical terms, and most of you I believe you know it. لما بتفتح اللي هو كبوت السيارة وبيكون عندك المساحة the engine and transmissions in front in the middle all the way back. يعني خلينا نقول كأنك رايح على الستيرنج ويل، كأنك بتوصل لمنطقة الدركسون اللي هو عند السائق من تحت هناك في narrow area. The battery placed. All of you know the battery of the car, how it looks. يعني ما هي thin, is not lithium battery. It's something that a big block, and as I told you, the size was even bigger than the car. يعني regular size. يعني comparable maybe other companies. Comparing to other companies, it was relatively big, and the place were all the way قدام في آخر الجهة اللي هو عند الدركسون وتحت. To extract it, can many screwdrivers has to be removed. طبعا you can see the plugging for the red and black cables, and you can easily take them off لأنهم visible and near. لكن the place how they put it, it was blocking او خلينا نقول بيصطدم بالحاجز حق الهيكل السياره من ناحيه اللي هو اخر اللي هو الكبوت، مش الامام ناحيه الفانز لا من الجهه الاخرى. فكان عمليه اخراجها وادخالها for many technicians over the years, they say the same, until one of them actually injured himself trying to take it from its position. And it was يعني خلينا نقول he was bleeding. Is not something that like يعني just a scratch or why I'm giving this example يعني it just came to my mind إنه the poor design needed excess work to complete a job that maybe if you have done battery replacement in other cars companies, or even if this company you go to another car where it was designed in a better way how to replace it, especially for something that occasionally you will do it, frequent of average 1 to 2 years, you are going every 1 or 2 years a maximum, you will go and change your battery. So to do it in this way, it will require excess time, and even sometimes laborers or technician, when they see that and they know how it's designed, they charge you more because they know that it will require from them more time compared to replacing a battery for a certain brands or certain cars. So that's an example of excess work, even if I've seen it. So you can imagine how the poor design or specification or material can cause excess work. The third type or the third category of excess work is the work content added by inefficient methods of manufacture or operation. The difference here is method, نظام. I'm not talking about design or material or specification. المethod, النظام المستخدم. Let's take an example. If the method of adding dropping cores, I believe most of you are watching now يعني been through this. The method, how it works when the system open to allow students to add and drop courses, and then you have the method to, if the system closed, you have another software, let's say platform, to communicate with your advisor to add courses. If that course was not provided from the department and it was from the college, then that request has to be conveyed to a different level. If it was from another college like math or English, then someone else or some authority will be needed. So the, the excess work for adding and dropping maybe courses, I'm talking now from a student's point of view, because I understand sometimes it happens. This is just an example here, just to make things more clearer. But when we go to systems, for example, poor layout, the building layout. If you go to building, there is no signs, and I believe many of the engineering students, they know what I'm saying. You go to a building that doesn't have signs of where is the corridors, where is the labs, and the classrooms, or even the elevator where it's located. So that will have an required excess work, because the visitors or the people, they will visit that building, they will spend excess time to search for the location they are looking for. So you can imagine now the poor layout here. Since the layout is here, we are considering it as a method, not a product design or specification. Poor utilization of the space, insufficient method of work, how the work is handled, how the work sequence and the operations of the tasks, it was not sufficient. It could redesigned or reworked again, so the method will be improved. The work will be reduced using, for example, lean management, الإدارة الرشيقة, as you can watch about this concept in quality improvement course. Poor planning for inventory. Oh, this is very good one, because poor planning for inventory will, an example of this, when you go for spare parts and they tell you we don't have this spare parts, you have to wait for any of, whether a car authorizing dealership or a company where they're fixing machines in your home like oven or fridge, and they tell you that this spare part is not available. I'm not talking in that part you were looking for in particular, but unavailability will cause excess work because of the request, because of the time waiting, whether from the company to be provided from the home manufacturer, or from the customer point of or request point of view. Okay, so the total time of a job, basically it would be the basic work plus all these type of excess work could happen and or appear in your system. So basic work plus excess work is the total time of a job. The excess work, whether it's from A, B, and C, or all of them, that all considered to be in the total time job. How we calculate it? Let's take this simple example to show you how we do find and calculate the total time job. In a time study of manufacturing operation, the average time observed to complete a product was 8.6 minutes. The performance rating applied to the observed workers was 0.95. The allowance during an 8-hour shift was 12.5%, or 60 minutes. Compute the labor standards. What is the requirement here? He wants to find basically what is the standard time. So we have, before we proceed with this solution, we have to identify or distinguish between two things, and they're very important. Okay, normal time and standard time. Normal time is the time when work should be done without any delays. Standard time is the time taken by the worker to complete the work with some unavoidable delays. A normal time, الwork done, no delays on that work. ما في أي تأخير بينتهي في هذا الوقت. الستاندرد تايم، التايم اللي قسنا به العامل أو الشخص اللي بيؤدي المهمة هذه to complete it with some unavoidable delays. في أشياء ما بنستطيع إنه نأخرها لأسباب يعني تكون uncontrollable زي ما when we were talking about in the basic work. So that unavoidable delays, when you calculate that time to complete that job, considering that unavoidable delays, we consider that the standard time, okay? He wants you to find the standard time in the question. The normal time equation is given here. It's given in the answer, but you should know it. So in solving examples or questions in exam or quiz or your project, you use the formula for the normal time equal the observed time times the performance rating. For the standard time, you will need the normal time, basically, because if you think about it, the standard time is considering the normal time, but with some delays. So it will require the normal time divided by 1 minus the allowance of the difference in the in the time، يعني اللي هو خلينا نقول الوقت المسموح به في أو المتغير، يعني اللي هو delays and avoidable delays. Okay. The information was given here when he said observed the average time. Pay attention here. The average time observed to complete a product. So he collected many samples, even though he didn't say that. And he found the average observed time to complete that product or task, and it was 8.6 minutes. So the observed time that we needed to find the normal time is 8.6 minutes. The performance rating applied to observed worker was 0.95. The performance rating اللي هو تقييم الجوب أو تقييم الأداء, it was 0.95, and that's usually it's set by the company who, or the process engineer or the production engineer, or whether if it was a service like you as an industrial engineer, you put the performance rating. This is like the scale, or like when we do grading or rubric for completing the answer, how you get the full mark and how you get portion of that mark depend on your performance. So the performance rating, it's set by the person who's working in designing this process or step. The allowance during an 8-hour shift was 12.5% or 60 minutes. What is that? That is a time that is allowable during a working shift. اللي هو we're talking about the allowable delays. So that is 0.125, which is 12.5%. And that is the fraction of the allowance, or the 60 minutes as the time. Compute the labor standard. So we want to find the standard time. All the given information here, it was listed. The observed time, it was 8.6, as we said. The performance rating is 0.95. The allowance for the time, اللي هو allowance for the delays, is 12.5%. So you use the fraction. Okay, how we calculate the normal time? The normal time equal the observed time times the performance rating. So you multiply those two guys here and في الأول. So that will be the 8.17. This is the normal time when no delays, without any delays. Now let's find the standard time. Okay, the normal time divided by 1 minus the allowance. Normal time is calculated from the previous step divided by 1 minus the allowance, which is the 8.17 divided by 0.875, and that's equal 9.337 minutes. So that is the standard time, and definitely just to think about it, to verify your answer, always standard time, you will find it slightly bigger than the normal time because considering the delays, okay? This is how you find, or an example can come for the total time for job, how to do it. We will also continue with the same concept, but with a different application, which is the work sampling. The work sampling is related to the same idea of the job time. Is the work of one or more employees is randomly sampled at periodic intervals. What does that mean? You remember that we need to take sometimes samples of students' work, whether projects, report, exams. We keep those samples for maximum performance, average performance, low performance. Over time, we use these samples to aid us or help us to evaluate what will be the time interval, for example, to design questions in an exam, and how you set that time for that question based on the samples you have collected. Also, the time set for an experiment lab, you can set or design the time for that experiment based on random samples you collected from students who are performing this lab experiments, and you see how much time they spend. So you can, over the time, when you do this randomly, you can have an خلينا نقول standard time, or standardized time for processing or for completing that task or completing that experiment or those job. From this, they do it in the work manufacturing or service. For example, they go and just take a sample for the job, how much time the labor he spent to finish it. They go to another labor randomly in different days, so they can evaluate or find the standard time. So that will help them to set the labor standard and also to set the allowance. ايش يعني allowance؟ انت بتحدد هنا الستاندرد تايم والallow time within this job specification. So you can say this job it needs 3 minutes, and you can put plus or minus for that 3 minutes or 3 hours, depending on the complexity of the task, how it's done, and you put that tolerance, which is the allowance. The same thing you can put even, or you can design for the اللي هو خلينا نقول البدلات اللي هي compensation when you are exceeding the standard time, so you can relate how much per hour the overtime will cost you for your company. So this is also another level where you can use the work sampling. So the work sampling, you take random sampled from your employee or one or more than one of their work to find or to set the allowance used in labor standards and to set the labor standards of your job that you collected. Example, similar to the previous one, a work sampling study was performed on an electronic assembly operation at IEA Instruments. The study covered an 8-hour shift with a single worker. The results of the study were the activity of assemble units. The worker's time as a percentage is 80% of the worker times used in this activity, the assemble units. If the worker received performance rating, remember the performance rating set by them is 1.2 on the assemble units activity, this activity you are doing the sampling, and 400 units were assembled during the study. There were 400 units assembled in this study where you get this result. And what is the labor standard for 100 units of this operation if the allowance for the operator is 20 ريال per hour? So here he set the allowance اللي هو البدل خلينا نقول للoperator to be 20 ريال per hour, and the standard he wants to find it for 100 units. So how we can find the standard time? Having the rating, we have the number of units that for the data collected. Also, we have the hour shifts. So how we can find the standard time from these given information? First, we have to find the average time. You remember when we started in the previous example, the average time, which is the average observed time, we needed to find it. And how we find that? We find it by dividing the total time of, let's convert it to minutes instead of hours here, so we can deal with the minutes. So to avoid the fractions later when we come to the cost, because not relatively high. So total of the minutes divided by the number of units assembled. How many minutes we have? We have 8-hour shift, and 80% of that 8-hour used for this job, which is the assembling. So the 80% of the 8-hour divided by the 400 units, the total number of units, that give us the average time. Let's see the solution. The solution here says the total minutes of assembly work divided by the number of units assembled. نبغى نوجد an average time. We cannot use the total time to find the standard. We have to find the average time. Remember, this example, the average time observed was given. Here, in the example we are solving, we have the total time and we have the total number of units. So we want to find this one, this 8.6, we want to find it first in this example. But here is not straightforward. We have the working time that used for all these 400 units give us or stated as a percentage from the total time. So we have to find an actual time used for this 400 units by having 80% of the 8 hours. 80% of the 8 hours, 8 hours is 480 minutes, and easier to or better to use the minutes, not right or wrong, I'm not saying, but so you don't deal with fractions and you do roundings in the answer. So we times or multiply 8 hours times the 80% after we convert it to a minute, and divide it over the 400 units, the total units you collected. So this is the average time for the assembly task. Now we continue with the same steps we did previously in the previous example. Let's find the normal time. Normal time, خلاص, you should know now the formula. Average time times the performance. The performance was given in the question as a 1.2. An average time you just calculated now in the in this previous step. So you find the normal time. You see why we are dealing with minutes. If you are dealing with hours, that will be يعني it's better to have upper scale in such cases like that. Like يعني when you do a unit like millimeter, so you deal with a bigger number than fractions. So now this is the normal time. The labor standard or labor time, how we calculate it, the same as we did previous example. In normal time divided by 1 minus the allowance fraction. The allowance fraction is given also in the question here. I believe the question was stated the allowance. If it's not, I will make sure that to be included. The allowance time is the 0.2, so it has to be at 20%. I believe, yes, yeah, the allowance time, it's given in the table, but the table here, it was not showing. It's a picture, so I believe it's hidden, yes, during the adjustment of the format. So the allowance time, it's at 20%. It will be updated. This is in the slide. So the allowance time is given here in the table as a 20%. So the allowance is basically 20%, and already the normal time, we just found it here from the previous step to find the labor standard, which is 1.44. So here you can say the allowance, we can type it so you know why we are. %20% is the allowance. And to find the labor cost for 100 units, as the question says, and you have allowance here of 20 riyal. The allowance was 20% for the time and 20 riyal for hour if you are exceeding اللي هو خلينا نقول a normal time or the specified time. So how much will be the cost for the labor if you have 100 units? Basically, you multiply the number, the labor standard, it's lower time, you multiply it with the 100 units. So this is the time that the labor he is going to work, and the compensation, it will be calculated based on, he will get 20 per hour, and we are dealing with minutes. So the 1.4 اللي هو labor standard, if he's going to produce 100 units, we divide it over 60 to deal with the minutes instead of the hour, because the rate was given as 20 riyal per hour. So we have to convert it to minutes. That's why we divide it over 60. فعندنا 20 ريال للساعة. We want to find the 20 for اللي هو for the minutes for 100 units. So if you are going to produce 100 units, how are we going to use it, or how are we going to calculate it? We converted all these, to hours, not to minutes. So we converted not the money, we converted the time here again from minutes to hour. So we divided by 60, so we can times it to 20. Otherwise, you have to change the money unit. Again, how we find the labor cost? عندنا labor time standard 1.44 for 100 units. عندنا 100 units we want to produce. So how we calculate the cost? We multiply the 1.44 times the 100 units, and that will be the time to produce those 100 minutes. How much it will cost me? It's 20 per hour. If it was 20 per minute, this step of dividing the over 60, it was not needed. Like, since the cost was given as a 20 per hour, not 20 per minute, so I have to divide the value of the minutes here over 60 to convert it to hour. So I multiply the 20 times a multiplication of 1.44 to 100 divided by 60. فإحنا كيف نحسب اللي هو الكالكوليت للليبر كوست based على الليبر standard based on the labor standard. الليبر ستاندرد كم حسبته؟ كم قطعة حتنتج؟ 100 200 700 whatever are you going to produce. What you are going to do, you multiply, تضرب كم عدد القطع اللي بتنتجهم في التايم للليبر، الوقت اللي يحتاجه التايم، اللي هو السعر اللي هو خلينا نقول إنجاز العمل، أو خلينا نقول وقت إنجاز العمل. After you multiply them, now you have the total time, total standard time for the labor. كم الليبر بيكلفني؟ 20 ريال في الساعة. At time I calculated it was minutes. خليها hour divided over 60. This is what we did here. Then you multiply it with the labor cost per hour. Okay, this is an extra step, by the way. يعني labor cost, this was an extra step. The question asked to find the labor standard, but I show you how to get more information by having the use of the labor standard. As we said, the use of this work sampling is to set the allowance and set also the labor standards. I showed you the example, even though the question asked to find the labor standard and it was given here, but we wanted also to find the labor cost and an extra information. I hope that was useful enough. Remember how to use the average time if it was not given, to calculate it by dividing the total time over the number of units you have assembled or produced. Then you can use it for calculating the normal time, the performance rating all the time. It will be set. You don't have to find it. It's given to you. The average time sometimes is given. Sometimes you have to find it from here. For the labor standards, always there will be the allowance fraction that is given. As we said, in this one, the slides will be updated in the shared folder to show you the percentage of the allowance, which is 20%. And that was an extra requirement here, also to learn how we get information, get more use. This method, to have it more useful, is not just to find the time. You can even estimate how much it will cost you. And this is actually how they set the labor hours. It's not arbitrarily. It shouldn't just, you ask someone how much this will cost me, it gives you 100 or 500 real. It should be based on the hours. And there are standardized for the jobs in some countries. You see, for example, oil service for your car. This is cost in average, let's say, $100 or something like that, or $40 real, depend on how much they set it up. So when you go to workshop, to do car shops, they will not give you or charge you something below or above that price by big amount or big difference. So basically every task, it should be monitored and measured in this way, and the same time, so you can evaluate how much it will cost you for every process. When you are acquiring some labors are like in our rate, انت بتوظف اللي هو temporary labors، فبتعرف انت كيف بتتحاسب عليهم. بتحاسبهم على التاسك، والتاسك هذه has a specified labor standard, okay, and it has specified cost. So you know how much it will cost you, basically, if you are going to acquire more, or also to utilize your labors in the workshop. So this is one of the techniques that we learned today in the human factors and safety. Today we covered the time for a job. We explained there are different time, the basic the time for job, it contains of the basic work content that we cannot reduce it, and the excess work content that we can work in reducing it, and it contains or comes from three categories: either the design specification, human resources or insufficient method, and the total time is the basic work plus the excess work that comes from any of the categories. We learned how we find the normal time and standard time for the job by having the formula: the normal time, the time that doesn't have delay; the standard time that complete by the workers and has some unavoidable delays. So usually we have the standard time is a bit more than the normal time. In the normal time, the performance rating usually is set by the organization and it's given to you. The observed time, either you have it already found or you have to find the average by dividing the total over the number of units, total time over the number of units. Standard time, it's based on the first or the previous step, which is the normal time, and the allowance, it's a percentage that is usually given to you to find the standard time considering this delays. We have solved two examples. Also, we explained the work sampling. We use it to find the allowance and set the labor standards. And we did the same example, similar to the first one, but also we added some extra requirement, how we get use of this labor standards to calculate the labor cost based on the number of units that you are going to produce. I hope you enjoyed this session and you learned something new today about the industrial engineering. Thank you for watching and see you soon. Goodbye.